for tuning in to Nobodies Podcast. How you doing, Jen?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How you doing with the whole daylight savings time? It actually occurred today, March 13th at 2 a.m. local time for most Americans.
Yeah, I'm exhausted today. It's so weird how 1 hour can make you so tired.
Oh, yeah, and I wanted to look into it just to kind of talk about it. I mean, this is something that we've sort of been blindly following for a long time, and there's a lot of history involved in this. I'm not going to get too far into the history, but it does do something awful to your sleeping patterns. It says that advancing clocks by 1 hour has been shown to disrupt sleep in Americans every spring, along with the rise in traffic accidents and heart attacks.
Wow.
Can you believe that? So this
No.
morning, I was awoken at around the exact same time that it says here that time change takes place at around 3 a.m. last night to the sound of this perpetual sound of somebody's alarm in the distance on my street. And I woke up so early. It was so early. I remember even my cat was giving me this look like, what the hell are you doing awake? The cat usually like hangs out at the end of my bed, and I got up and I was just like trying to figure out what's going on. My cat's like, this is unlike you. Anyway, so they created this whole sort of like township rebellion on my neighborhood street. I looked outside because there was a situation where like the alarm would go off and it would go for like 2 or 3 minutes at a time. And that's one thing that you can forgive that. And the car alarm would go off, and then like 5 minutes later it would turn on, and it did this literally for like 2 or 3 hours.
Oh,
So at some point you can start to hear, because everything's so quiet outside, right? At 2 or 3 a.m., no one's doing anything, right? But then you can start to hear the ruffle in the complex. You can start to hear the doors slamming outside. So you know that people are awake trying to figure out what's going on.
For sure.
I ended up going outside, and I saw people on the balcony. Saw like some guy I've never even seen before walk outside in his balcony without his shirt on. That's how you know when shit's crazy, when you got like a dude walking in his boxers outside without a shirt on. And it was the one thing that I observed about this whole thing that I thought was kind of cool, because we live in a world that's kind of largely divided by a lot of different ideologies. I felt like we all stood united together for one common goal, Jen.
For sure.
to save sleep.
Yes.
You know?
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine the people with kids? All the animals are up. The babies are crying.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone's tired. Well, I guess the only bright side is that it happened on the weekend and not during the weekday.
Yeah. But if, the
work
rise in all these things, then these sort of unfortunate things that happen, which I imagine are due to health. I know some people that once you wake them up, they can't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm one of those fortunate people that doesn't really, I never really required a whole lot of sleep. I'm one of those people that you hear about that only need like 3 or 4 hours of sleep a day.
Yeah.
And I'm good. But there are some people, including roommates that I've had, like if they don't get their solid 7 hours of sleep, life ain't happening for them or other people. So I can imagine that, especially when you have kids,
Yeah. Yeah. I really only require 5 hours, but as I get older, I've been sleeping a little longer. I also go to bed earlier.
Really?
So, yeah, I go to bed at like 10 o'clock.
It's interesting because I noticed that just working alongside of like elderly people, their sleep schedule is kind of all over the place, because a lot of our sleep is driven by responsibilities that we have the next day, like work or activities with friends. But when you're an elderly person, you don't really have all of those things. So I noticed that like sometimes they'll wake up, or my grandma used to wake up at like 3 a.m. in the morning. I don't even know why. She just, I just wake up. I just naturally wake up that way. And I remember seeing documentaries online of like this elderly grandfather type of fellow that would wake up randomly at like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. in the morning, take a shot of whiskey, eat some ice cream, feed his cats, and then go back to sleep.
Oh.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could go, once I get up and I start moving around, I can't go back to sleep.
Really?
Like Zeppelin, he'll come in our room, and this happens every single night. So we had to start locking him in the office.
Yeah.
So he couldn't come in the room and wake us up. But right around, 3 a.m., between 3 and 5 is really kind of his sweet spot. And he'll come in and start meowing super loud. And then he'll run up the headboard and sit at the top. So he'll wake the dogs up, and then they start barking. And I found that if I get up and I go lock him in the room, that I can't go back to sleep. I have to stay in the bed. The second I get out of bed, it's over. Yeah.
That's when the boops start happening. That's when the biscuits are starting to be made by the kitties.
Yep.
And when they want you to get up, they have these crazy, weird, subtle ways of doing it. But there are some advantages to the time change as far as right now. I'm one of those people that loves the idea of having more light at the end of the workday, And I noticed that my behavior and my emotions sort of course, try to go with the seasons. And whenever it's more dark out earlier, it tends to be more of a time for introspection. So now that we're venturing into the realm of longer days and more light, naturally I become somebody that's a little bit more productive, you know. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, Jen, because today's topic is going to be about hustle culture. The pros as well as the cons. More often, more likely it's going to be a lot of cons, because this is something that I think me and you have some experience in. And it took us going down that long path of hustle culture in order to realize all of the really unfortunate things that it can do to your health, having gone down that path. So before we get started, I wanted to actually just give some context to this whole thing. I didn't know this until I researched it, Jen, where the term sort of hustle came from. And it's really, really surprising. It says the culture of hustle finds its roots in late 19th century American society, when to hustle meant to work extra hard, which is pretty obvious. Yeah. But it was used specifically concerning African Americans. There were publications that came out during the time that associated Blackness with laziness and stated that a lack of hustle was the reason African Americans struggled to integrate into the economy post-emancipation. The idea that the obstacles African Americans faced were due to their own failures rather than systemic oppression became pervasive. So Black people started to hustle against systems such as those that perpetuated racial segregation and white supremacist violence. So basically, during that time, the hustle became associated with illegal activities such as theft. And then from there, it sort of found its way into the mainstream when it came to like music and hip hop, and artists started flaunting how much the hustle was the reason for their stardom and their success. I think the definition of that is really kind of unfortunate, but we've adapted this sort of culture with millennials and Gen Z specifically, right? So now we have a completely different definition of what hustle culture means. It is defined by how much you do daily to get ahead. And it's common for us, especially nowadays, to have more than one job, something that we can do on the side. And I think this is where hustle culture comes into play. So I feel like there's I don't really blame millennials or Gen Zs to falling into this because of the world that we live in. It's really expensive to live, right? You have inflation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Inflation makes everything really, really, really difficult to live. I mean, the cost of housing, the cost of just going through a regular everyday life is so high. So we have to, in a lot of ways, every single person to some degree has to hustle. There isn't anybody that I know in LA that doesn't have some sort of side hustle or something they're trying to make happen. At the same time, if you're a millennial, then more than likely you've grown up in a family where there's only one parent, and you're having to take care of the family alongside of the one parent that you work with or the one parent that you have, right?
Right.
So I think that's where kind of hustle culture came in. So it's really no fault of their own. We're a part of this sort of government and this society that causes us to really, really, I guess, just work our asses off in order to make a living. So, but what we're going to be talking about, I think, is a more sort of like a subgenre of self-help, which is kind of a strategy that people sort of embark on in order to try and make this sort of success that people are looking for happen. And there are all different ways to go about doing this, but the hustle culture that we're going to be talking about are basically like the Gary V's of the world, that are driven by these sort of social media influencers that are giving us or selling us this sort of ideology that in order to be successful, we got to do very specific sets of practices in order to make it happen. And sometimes those things aren't always the greatest for our health, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You had a business, Jen. Like you were, as long as I've known you, you've been a business owner. You've had several different businesses since I've known you. I can imagine hustle culture caught you at some point, right?
Oh God. Yeah. I've been in the hustle forever. And I think it started because I was on my own so young. So I had to work a second job just to survive. And I remember going and having $20 the entire week, and I had to buy gas and pay for food with $20, so it's looking back on that and working two jobs nonstop and always being tired because I worked the night shift at a Ihop.
Oh, you worked at Ihop, Jen?
Yeah, I did.
Flapjacks?
Yeah. So yeah, I was, I would start at 10 o'clock at night and then I would go till 7 in the morning.
How old were you when you did that?
18.
18?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I can relate to everything that you're saying. And I think that's the reason why the hustle got me early. The thug life got me early, Jen, because it was the same situation for me. We both were more or less caretaking, our parent figure at the time, which my father was, he was a drug addict. That was a very unfortunate thing, but I had to like really start early because I was very, really independent and I had to take care of my family. So I ended up getting one of my first jobs in Arizona when I was 15 or 16 years old at Denny's, working the night shift.
Yeah.
So I would work, I'd get in there like around I think 9 or 10 p.m. And then I wouldn't leave work until the following 7 or 8 a.m. And then I had to go to school directly after work. So I wasn't getting any sleep. And maybe I've conditioned myself to not ever need sleep.
That's exactly.
Same situation.
That was my exact schedule. So I worked at Journeys shoe store, stocking shoes in the back.
Journeys
and,
too?
At Ihop, and went to school. So, and the Ihop was located directly next to a strip club. So the strippers would come in after they got off work and eat breakfast together. So my customers were strippers.
Right. They
which was kind of nice because I got good tips. Yeah.
Yeah. They pay you $30 in $1 bills.
Yeah. If they had a good night, I had a good night,
I remember that because there were benefits to working the night shift. Because I remember you had the club crowd or the people that hung out at the bars and they needed somewhere to go, some respite at the end of the night. And I'd always have drunk people come in, and at the end of and then when they order, they're like, I don't know, give me whatever. And then you just bring them out food. And at the end of that whole thing, you bring them out the bill and they just throw money at you. And I'm like, well, do you want change? They're like, don't worry about it. I remember I used to get really, really large tips from these people. Yeah. I never had anybody come back at the next day being like, hey, that $100 that I gave you, can I get the change back? I feel like I kind of got away with that. So that was cool. So basically that whole hustle culture came as a result, at least for us. And I'm considered a millennial. Mm-hmm. I think that you're probably on the cusp of that as well. A lot of us had to sort of take on, secondary jobs or find a way to make money as a way to support our families. So I think in that way, I think that is the majority of kind of what people are experiencing nowadays. So you have two kind of different reasons. One, people need to make a living. Mm-hmm. And hustle culture seems appealing to those people because it gives us a strategy in order to try and be successful, but it's all about how you go about doing it, right? It's all about how you go about doing it, how it integrates into your life in a healthy and cohesive way. So when you had your own businesses, Jen, aside of that, this is kind of moving forward into your adulthood. How did that sort of hustle culture exist in your life at that time? Yeah,
I started hustle culture as a way to survive, and then it kind of turned into a lifestyle. I felt guilty if I wasn't working, and as unhealthy as that sounds, it's true. And then outside of that, I also used it as a form of escapism. So I had a lot of emotional issues growing up, and whenever you're working, you're not thinking about your boyfriend or your girlfriend that broke up with you, or how broke you are, or, anything else that's happening in your life. You're just focused on work. So, so as an adult, I just kind of use that as a form of emotional bypass.
That's true. And I did the same thing. If you're coming from a broken home, if you're coming from, being a caretaker to a toxic figure in your life, the things that you will do in order to distract yourself from having to really feel through that, especially at a young age. You may not have the emotional maturity in order to really lean into what it is that you're experiencing. So the only thing that you can do is distract yourself with a job or to trying to create an entirely different life, different than the one that you have. So in a lot of ways, it's innocent. We want a better life for ourselves, right? But as it pertains to hustle culture today, which is what we wanted to kind of discuss, is doing all of those things for the wrong reasons.
Oh, man. Right. Yeah. Every single business I've ever owned was for the wrong reason.
For the wrong reasons.
Yeah. 100%. I've yet to own a business that was born of creativity or because I just, for fun or, whatever. Everything was okay, this looks like a good financial opportunity. This looks like it could be really lucrative. And those were always the drivers for why I was, getting involved in these businesses. And as a result of that, none of them worked because you really do have to have a passion for whatever it is that you're doing.
That's true.
Otherwise you burn out. And that's exactly what happened. I burned out on every single one of these businesses.
Yeah. And that's something that we kind of lend itself to capitalism in a way, because we live in a society that where you're defined by the things that you do and not the reason why you do those things. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
we're defined by the
Right.
wealth that we have. We're defined by how much productivity at a surface level that we could dish out. But the question never comes in as to whether or not somebody's actually happy doing these things. Because as far as the way that I grew up, it was all about, okay, if you had money, that was the only thing that really mattered. What you needed to do in order to get that was all that really mattered. The question of whether or not
Mm-hmm.
you're happy doing those things wasn't really a question that people were asking at the time. You just do what you got to do, especially if you're part of a lower income family.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of doing something that makes you happy isn't really the priority. The priority
No,
is
it's not even an
surviving.
option. It's
Yeah,
not an option. It's
right,
like, no, I need to do something to make money because I need to eat, you know?
right. Yeah, so we're all in this boat trying to survive. So I can acknowledge that every single person is hustling in some way, but hustle culture is a very specific ideology. And we guess we can start by just talking about why people get into hustle culture. At least from my experience, they categorize it into sort of the self-help category. I'm not going to talk too much about self-help, but the feelings that I notice people go into hustle culture with are feelings of inadequacy, right? They
Yeah.
feel like they're missing something. They, they have Instagram accounts, social media accounts, especially nowadays. You go online, you're seeing a bunch of people appearing to look and seem like they have a better life than yours. So
Mm-hmm.
because social media is sort of driven by that sort of like lifestyle, it becomes easy to feel as though you're not doing enough in your life. So you have feelings of
Mm-hmm.
inadequacy. You have feelings of purposelessness. You want to find some sort of purpose. You also want to feel good. You want to be identified with that success and that wealth because it's what you see all around you as being sort of like the pinnacle and the paragon of where it is that we need to be. And so I think the main energy is feelings of inadequacy. And whenever you have feelings of inadequacy entering into anything, you have this sort of underlying energy of vulnerability, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're desperate in need for money, the things that you will do in order to get there.
Yeah. It's interesting how people glorify overworking. Like it's this badge of honor. If you're overworking, that's what you should be doing. Right. And all that does is create like this interesting environment of fear, guilt, and shame, especially when you feel like you're not running at the same pace as everyone else. You
Yeah.
feel like you're like constantly behind.
You're setting the bar so high. And I got to think, okay,
Yeah.
who sets the bar? Who sets the bar for these
Yeah.
things? Well, you have the
Right.
Gary V's of the world, you have the Simon Sinek's in the world, you have the Steve Jobs of the world, the Elon Musks of the
Elon
world.
Musk. Mm-hmm.
Like these tech companies, I think for the most part are the ones that kind of perpetuate this sort of hustle culture, right? It's this
Mm-hmm.
idea of
Yeah.
building something from the very bottom, becoming an entrepreneur, and being the sort of moderator of your life. And I think it also comes as a result of people not wanting to engulf themselves in the sort of 9 to 5 corporate America. That time is that era of time is something that millennials do not identify with at all. Millennials just
Right.
do not like the idea of spending all of their time working. So they're trying to find more efficient ways in order to make money, right? More fast and easy ways to make money. And I
Mm-hmm.
think the hustle culture ends up becoming, I guess, really enticing to them. But
Yeah.
I, I,
It gave birth to the gig economy, right? Like
yeah,
all of these millennials doing, learning certain skills and just doing gigs.
yeah.
So whenever you're just doing gigs and you don't have a steady stream of income, you really do have to hustle because you don't know where your next job is coming from.
Yeah, yeah. And I always try and keep a sort of like a spiritual underpinning behind why we do all of these things. And I always keep coming back to the feelings of inadequacy. And then as a result of that, the vulnerability that we enter into this space. So we're likely to get influenced by lots of different things, toxic and positive. I find that hustle culture kind of denotes more toxicity when it comes to this thing, because if we're approaching it with feelings of vulnerability and inadequacy, then we can be easily taken advantage of by other people. But there is one thing that I did want to talk about, which is the sort of, I guess, the neurological sort of implications to this, which I think we've talked about this before, which is that, one thing that I think people do is when they start on this sort of path, is they start reading books about it. You can go on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube and you can watch a million talks about hustle culture. The one thing that I found when I first got into it is how incredibly motivating it makes you feel, how incredibly
Yeah.
motivated it makes you feel. You feel
Right.
like literally you can do anything, right?
Yeah.
you have these millionaires, doing talks in front of their Lamborghinis, or like they're doing seminars with these little earpieces, and they're just like the Tony Robbins of the world that are making you so motivated that you're willing to just walk over hot coals, or like take, below zero cold showers, like shit like that. And that's, there's nothing wrong with that, but it makes you feel a certain way. And I did some research on this, and apparently positivity and motivation is really strongly linked to dopamine, the dopamine receptors that we have in our brain. So after I would read these books, after I would hear these talks, you just feel like, oh shit, I got to do something. I feel so good. Well, what you're feeling is a combination of things. I think the most pronounced thing that you feel is the dopamine high. And we can become addicted to that high.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and
absolutely
in
can.
the same way, because you can become addicted to that dopamine high, you can become addicted to this idea of improving, right? This idea of success and improvement, right? And this can in a lot of ways distract you from how you really feel inside. Just because you feel motivated to make something happen doesn't mean that those feelings of inadequacy go away, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that I think a lot of people are missing in hustle culture is this sort of need to act on that motivation, and also find something that you're passionate about and something that you love to do, and manning the ship in that way, right?
Yeah. What I found in my businesses, and, always working 2 jobs and always having something else in the background going on, is that I would always lose sight of why I was doing it. Like I would lose sight of the why. And you got to be really careful. It's one thing to have a second job at night doing something that you really love. Like say you're a singer and, you're singing in bars at night because you want to advance that part of your life, and maybe you have to work in a diner during the day. I don't know. So that's one thing, but it's a completely different thing when you have a second job, for the purpose of just making money or creating wealth, and you lose sight of why you're even doing it.
Yeah, I think it's a really important thing is to find out what your why is, why it is that you do things. And maybe your why might be wealth. Okay, well, if your why is wealth and you equate that to success, you can go down that path and you can get a lot of wealth, but that doesn't mean you're going to be happy doing it.
Nope.
Like it doesn't mean you're going to be happy doing it. And so, it's this whole thing has this feeling of taking one set of sort of feelings of inadequacy, or maybe one set of addiction or toxic behavior, and replacing it with another one, right? I think the main thing with hustle culture that I noticed is that it can give you these, feelings of positivity that aren't really earned in a way. It's like this feeling of accomplishment without actually even accomplishing something. There's this fellow by the name of M.J. DeMarco, and he has this terminology called action faking, which is doing something without any progress being made, right? And I think that hustle culture kind of denotes this in a lot of ways too, because it makes us feel super amped and super on top of the world without having anything really to show for it. So I think it's really important that if you're going to go down this path, to find out what your why is, just like you said, and figure out what it is that you're passionate about, because I find that you're more than likely willing to put everything that you can into something if you enjoy doing it. And if you don't enjoy doing it, if you're not passionate about doing it, you will maybe still give out the same level of energy, but you'll burn out. You'll realize that it doesn't make you happy.
And rarely are you successful.
Yeah. Rarely are you successful. So, and this is also the thing too. I feel like I get it when we're young, you got to do what you got to do, right? Sometimes you need to take on a second job, and that whole feeling of, obviously I didn't wake up thinking that like, I'd be really happy working at Denny's. Like that's not like a situation that happened when you were young. But when you get older and you have a job already and you're doing okay, there's this one thing that happens where I feel like, we can't lose sight of the fact that we, first of all, have jobs, right? Yeah. There are some families out there that would absolutely love to just have the job or 9-to-5 job that you have that don't have access to that. So we have to be grateful for what we do have, right? And, not just completely, because this is the thing. I remember going to this discovery training a while back. It was sort of like a landmark training. And this is a perfect example of this whole thing, because they were selling a certain future to you. They were giving you this idea that you were worth so much more than what you currently have. And I remember some people that were in that course, and I took a lot of really good things from it, but I remember some people that were in that course had perfectly great jobs. They had degrees in like sociology, and they worked at nonprofits. After this class, they wanted to just completely quit their job and pursue something they had no experience in whatsoever. And you know what? Those people did do that. They ended up quitting their jobs. It hurt them financially. It hurt their family financially, all because of these feelings of motivation and this selling of this future that they were promised, and they didn't get it.
Right. And, there's a degree of that you can manifest, right? Like there's a degree of manifestation to bring yourself into a new career or, what have you. But it's completely different to just stop and quit your job, and have a complete career change without any preparation, to move you in that direction.
Yeah. So it's not like looking at it so much as black or white. Like you don't have to just completely quit your job and leave yourself at risk and your family's risk. The hustle could be about trying to juggling the two, like being able to work your job and then also do this thing on the side. I remember I was listening to a podcast by Almost 30, and that was the advice that they gave is, you don't, just because you have a podcast, it makes more sense to sort of juggle your primary job so that you're not placing yourself at sort of financial risk. But I'm just noticing a lot of people nowadays, because of that motivation, because of that dopamine high, because of that addiction to getting better, they're willing to just start from the very beginning. And you can do that, but I think there are some repercussions that go along with that, which is that you can really fuck yourself up doing that,
Yeah, there's better ways to do it for sure.
Better ways
my grandma used to say, a candle that burns twice as hot will burn out twice as fast. And when she said that, she said it in reference to relationships, right? But it's totally applicable with other situations in life, especially working. So.
Yeah, and so I think we need to really look at where this information is coming from. Like, who are the main moderators of this sort of hustle culture that are dishing this stuff out? And I think that there are a lot of teachers out there that have good intentions, but I also feel like there are people out there that don't have good intentions that are looking to take advantage of people, right? So I looked into this, this whole era of sort of like fake gurus. There's this whole generation, this whole group of people that are pointing this stuff out, and I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah.
The self-help industry is a $13.6 billion business.
Wow. Right? I didn't realize it was that big.
I didn't know it was that big either. So whenever you have money flowing in with that much money, there's always going to be, just like anything in life, there's always going to be people that want to take advantage of that, and as a result, take advantage of other people. And this is sort of like the most worthy relationship to a toxic person, because who are you attracting? Who is your audience if you're somebody that's either a coach or a motivational speaker? Most of them are people that feel like they're missing something, people that are not doing well, people that have feelings of inadequacy. So they write books, courses, retreats, coaching services that you can invest in with these promises of success or these lessons of needing to hustle in order to get by. And they can trick you into thinking that you need all of this stuff in order to, get to that place. And, I've been online, I know exactly how this stuff works. They can charge you thousands and thousands of dollars that you don't have in order to have the opportunity to hop on board that sort of ship that they're on. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And end up taking advantage of innocent people.
Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah.
I never thought about it like that, but you're absolutely right. The people that attend those seminars are attending them a lot of times out of desperation.
Right. And I look at it kind of in the same way
really
that like mega churches approach Christianity, right?
Oh, yikes. Yeah.
Christianity keeps you convinced that you are a sinner and that you need the church in order to enter the kingdom of heaven. So what they do is they keep you in this perpetual state of being a sinner, right? That you need God and you need the church in order to pass go. And I feel like with self-help, it keeps you addicted to a dream that you'll be successful by keeping you kind of in this state of dissatisfaction because they set the bar so high, right? You're always one meditation away, one retreat away, one course away from reaching success and happiness, but they never ever clearly define what that destination is, because that is up to
Right.
you. That is
Yeah.
completely up to you, you know?
Uh-huh.
And if it were up to those people, they wouldn't need the course in order to get there, you know? So it's like they sell this sort of ideology that you're trying to make happen, but you're not even entirely sure that it even exists, you know?
For sure. There's always a master class, and the master class costs twice as much
Yeah.
as the intro.
Yeah. And the risky thing about, like, I guess, spiritual modalities like Reiki and a lot of these sort of energy healings is that, you know, a lot of our Western society considers it a pseudoscience. I don't, because I believe in the energetics and the energy behind it. But then you have these people that enter into this field and take advantage of that by selling false services. Like, I remember I knew this astrologer a long time ago, and I've been a part of the New Age community for a long time. If you've been a part of the community for a long time, you know that it doesn't cost $400 for a 1 hour long astrology service, right?
$400.
$400.
You knew somebody that was charging $400
$400 to sit
for
with
an
this
astrology
person
reading
for an hour and a
Holy
half
shit.
to go over an astrology chart that you can find online for free.
Oh my
Right.
God, I'm in the wrong business.
Yeah, dude, like, you hear stuff like that, and I just my Libra scales start. My little spidey senses and my Libra skills start going crazy, because I just think of how unfair that is, because I knew the type of people that this person would attract.
Yeah.
They were, you know, desperate housewives, or like single mothers, or men that were going through a divorce, people that were going through really unfortunate times in their lives. And they turned to somebody and trust them to give them information that could, you know, help them on the path to recovery or the path to success. But I noticed that a lot of these people also didn't have the money to pay for this, but they found the money. Because you know what these type of people say to others? Is that if you care about yourself, you will invest in your future. And if
Oh
you
my
don't,
gosh.
then you don't care about yourself. Right?
A crock of shit. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
terrible.
Yeah.
That's terrible. And that's just taking advantage of people and
Yeah.
preying on these poor people while they're out there searching for answers
Yeah.
to whatever their problem is in life. That's horrible.
It's true. And you know, and I've seen this happen where it's like, you know, somebody comes back to somebody and says, hey, you know, I don't think I really got what I needed from this sound bath, or this $1,500 course, or this retreat that I went on. And they'll say something to the effect of, well, you know, it's your own thoughts and your own ego preventing you from accessing that success. Right?
You're blocking yourself. You're blocking yourself from success.
Yeah, it's like they escape any accountability, you know. And given there are some people that will maybe like work with you in order to like try and make life happen, but I'm talking about the people out there that are in this business to take advantage of other people. And this is what we leave ourselves vulnerable to when we go down this path. So to talk about hustle culture a little bit more, a lot of what hustle culture promotes is working hard for the sake of working hard, right? Working hard for its sake versus working hard for the right thing. And if that's the case, it becomes more of like a distraction, right?
Yeah.
At least from my perspective, hustle culture works in direct contradiction to spirituality. But you find that a lot of coaches try to integrate the two, right? Hustling isn't this idea of like spirituality is about, you know, accessing a certain state of peace and awareness within yourself and then operating from that place. How does that go with burning yourself out trying to obtain success? So, you know, I'm noticing that in spiritual circles, the sort of hustle culture thing works. And I just feel like they're just two completely different conflicting ideologies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking hustle culture is so bad for you. It's so bad for your psyche, but it's also really bad for your body.
Yeah.
And I think people overlook that, you know, being in that constant state of stress, you start to produce more cortisol. And as a result of that, all kinds of really fun things happen in your body. You know, it increases anxiety and depression, heart disease, memory impairments, weight gain, you know, all of that stuff from prolonged periods of stress.
Right. So when I hear like these you know, career coaches that have more of like a spiritual basis behind what they do, this is exactly what I think about. You know, you're motivating them to do more and to work longer hours, but at the same time, you're trying to sell them this whole like, well, it's about well-being and inner peace. I'm like, well, how do you bridge those two together if they're two completely different sort of ideologies? You know, I think the first step really is finding something that we are passionate about that doesn't feel like work. This is how I would approach it, where instead of hustle, it becomes more satisfaction, right? Because if we get into this whole idea that like we need to hustle in order to make a living, then I think that just automatically equates to burnout. I think the best way to look at it, at least for me, is when I started doing something that I was passionate about, it's like a sound healing or podcasting, it doesn't feel like work to me because it's something that I genuinely love to do. That's a different energy that sort of powers that ship, right?
Yeah.
Like you're not thinking of the amount of money that you'll get from doing this. You're thinking about how good this makes you feel. You're thinking about how much meaning and purposefulness it adds into your life. And I feel like that is more sustainable. And I think that that's a really big thing with hustle culture is it's not sustainable over time,
It's not. And people think that by hustling more that they're going to get more done or they're going to be more creative, because they're working on things longer, but it's actually the complete opposite. There's a lot of studies that show that you're actually less creative. It blocks your creativity being overworking.
And that's true. You know why? Because creativity, at least from my perspective, can't be forced.
Yeah,
I feel like whenever
exactly.
you have this idea of creativity needing to be forced, like waking up saying, okay, I need to make this happen, I think we can get in the way of progress when we feel that we have so much to lose by not being creative. Like I brought up this metaphor before in the past, which is like, there are some artists out there, their first album is really fucking good. Like all the songs are on their album are amazing. And they came from this sort of like natural flow that happens during the creative process that just comes from the experiences that they have in life. But the second they get signed to a major record label, the clock starts ticking. So you have all of these musicians packing into a studio trying to make creativity happen. And then the second album sucks.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's like you, at least for me, like whenever it came to making music, whenever it came to writing, whenever I find myself with this pressure of having to be creative, it makes it so hard to access the creative realm, because creativity is really something that is driven by this feeling of spontaneity. It's like it's accessing a different reservoir of energy inside of you that can't be explained, can't be defined. It's just something that I guess we would call the flow state.
It comes from a place of love. Whenever you're operating from a place of love and you're doing something that you really love to do, it puts you in flow, and then the creative juices start flowing and you're naturally productive, right? Whenever we're trying to force that and overworking, it blocks your creativity and also reduces your productivity. Yeah. And it takes so much longer to produce, results of a said project than if you would have given yourself some breaks and, where it wasn't so forced.
That's true. And I think a lot of that maybe can come down to whether or not we trust ourselves. I think one thing is that when we are so focused on hustling, we can really easily lose sight of everything else in life that we can draw inspiration from, right? Because if we have an expectation of how something should look, you're completely negating all of the other sources of inspiration that you can draw into your life that can make you more creative. You know what I mean? And so I feel like it's really important to always keep your awareness open to everything. You can draw inspiration from literally everything, but when you have just this one pointed focus, like it has to happen a certain way, it's no surprise that you get in your own way. I remember when I used to do sound baths a while back, I used to always stress about how I needed to do it, what it is that I needed to talk about, how I was going to play a certain way. And I noticed every time I did that, I got in my own way. And I noticed once I just trusted myself and just did it with just trust that I knew exactly what I was doing, I remember it was like accessing a different part of my subconscious and my spirit. And it was something that definitely wasn't premeditated. Like it just flowed so much better, Whenever I would think too much about what I was going to say, I would always hiccup over my own words. But whenever I just sort of trusted myself and moved forward, somehow it always ended up working out, Yeah. Yeah. So I think,
absolutely.
I think we need to make sure that hustling doesn't become a distraction to life. We can lose focus on all the beautiful things if we're just constantly distracted by this sort of fast-paced sort of culture, because it can come at the cost of everything that makes you human,
It's such an unnatural way to live, Like you stop, at some point you stop participating in the human experience and, you stop doing things that you really like to do. You start avoiding your hobbies, maybe avoiding your family or your partner,
Right.
Avoiding, your own self-care.
It's
And
true.
it's a really unnatural way to live. I mean, you can't just check out of the human experience, even
Yeah.
though a lot of people do.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing for me when I started reading up about this whole thing is how your relationships suffer, you know? Like
Yeah.
there are some people that take pride in the fact that they're always busy. They're like, sorry, I can't go to lunch with you guys. I have to work. Or I'm sorry, I can't go on this trip with you guys because I have to work. I'm sorry, Mom, I can't come and see you because I have this thing that I'm doing. There's a certain demographic of people that feel pride in the fact that they're doing something and they think that other people are going to be like, well, you know what? That guy is making life happen. But the dark side of
Mm-hmm.
that is that those relationships start to deteriorate. Your relationship with your
Yeah.
mother, your relationship with your friends. And at the end of the day, maybe you may be successful, but you're not going to have anybody in your life to enjoy it with. And to me, it's
Right.
not worth that. You know,
Yeah. That's
to
where
me,
that
it's not
saying,
worth that.
it's lonely at the top, that's where that comes from.
Oh, yeah. It's lonely at the top. Hustle culture promotes not being satisfied unless a certain result is accomplished. And, I think it can give us a false sense of confidence, leading to irresponsible decisions to quit jobs that affect independence and family, our relationships with our families. And, so it's definitely something to take to take a look at. And I don't know, every time I get on this sort of boat with hustle culture, and I've been a part of this too, especially when you're on social media, there's always this pressure involved to make the next video, to make the next post, to have this many followers, have this many likes and subscriptions. And I had to really sit and think to myself, like, what is the goal? Is the goal to monitor my progress by the numbers or by maybe the value that I feel like it's giving me or other people, you know?
Right.
And it's not one of those things that can happen overnight. And it's not going to be one of those things that will produce immediate results. And I think that's where the how would I say it? Like that's where the passion needs to take place, because that's the only sustainable energy that's going to kind of take that sprint along with you, is doing something just because it makes you happy, just because it provides you with happiness, and to where it doesn't even feel like work. 5 years, 10 years down the line, you'll still be doing it because it makes you happy. And maybe by that time, you will have achieved what you wanted to achieve. But we live in an era of sort of instantaneous sort of results. The amount of anxiety that it puts people through when they invest their time into something or all their money into something and they expect an immediate result and not get it can pull you further back into these feelings of inadequacy. And it can also pull you further in, more than likely, being taken advantage of by people trying to sell you courses in order to try and heal that and move forward with something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you get taken advantage of in many different ways, not just by people trying to sell you courses, but, you can even be taken advantage of at work, like by your boss, by your company. If you're feeling like you're obligated to not take a sick day or a personal day, or not take your full lunch break, or you're answering calls or your Slack or checking emails on the weekends, all of that sets expectations. And your expectation, your employer initially is hiring you for a set number of hours. Anything that you're doing above and beyond that, you're doing for free. But when you start doing that, people expect that of you. And that's one thing that I've really struggled with, because I have no boundaries, right? And, I'll check emails on the weekends and look at my Slack on the weekend and, work until 8 o'clock every night.
Yeah.
And that only hurts me. My company doesn't care that I'm doing that. In fact, they're probably happy because I'm doing all this extra work for free. But what it does is it resets expectations. And now when I don't answer emails on the weekend, my boss is like, is everything okay? I sent you an email on Saturday and you didn't respond. And that's my own fault.
Yeah, that's true. And it sounds like we're just completely shitting on hustle culture, but the way that what I always come back to is just balance. A work-life balance, I think, is the most important thing. And the one thing that I did want to bring up is, how hustle culture kind of demonizes the work that doesn't correspond with passions. Like wanting a job
Right.
that you're passionate about is always ideal, right?
Yeah.
But we can still be happy doing something that we aren't passionate about by remembering everything that work and that job provides us, right? There's so many people without jobs, especially right now. There are so many people that are living on less than $1 a day in the world, right? So I think
Yep.
realizing this and never losing sight of the fact that there's somebody out there that has less than you, and there's somebody out there that can work harder than you and still make less than you. And I think that realizing this helps us understand that it isn't always the work that drives unhappiness. It's how we think about the work that we're doing. So I feel like if you're in a position where you have a job and you're unhappy, don't quit. I mean, if you want to quit your job, that's the journey you want to go down. But by changing your relationship to the work that you're doing, you could cultivate feelings of happiness by remembering everything that you have to be grateful for by what it provides you. If it's able to feed your family, if it's able to put food on your table, pay your rent, that is something that should be appreciated. Always work towards your dreams on doing something that you're passionate about, but don't feel bad because there are other people out there telling you that unless you're doing something you're happy with, you don't have a right to feel happiness over, being in a job that you're unhappy with. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like when you raise the bar so high and you have these people that are like, oh, well, look at all these sheep that are just following the herd and you guys need to like take life into your own hands. Like it's sort of demeaning in a way. It makes you feel like you're not doing enough,
Right.
So I feel like it's really important to remember that, you can still be happy by changing your relationship to what you're doing. That would be my approach. I guess the more spiritual perspective is that you could learn how to be happy doing anything, right?
Agreed. You really
can learn to be happy doing anything. Yeah. So there was this fellow by the name of Robert Waldinger, and he conducted this Harvard study of adult development. And they've been studying this particular study that I'm going to be talking about for 82 years, the past 82 years. They have been studying the lives of 724 men and their families as young adults. And this is what they figured out, that when they were young adults, most of the men believed that fame, wealth, status were the biggest priorities in life to reach happiness. This is what they're taught. I mean, I can relate to this because this is what we're taught growing up, right? This is what we're taught. And the studies have shown that the most successful people were people that leaned into relationships with family, friends, and community. That was the sort of ultimate sort of takeaway that this guy, Robert, I saw this, he did a TED Talks, I guess a really, really well-known person, works at Harvard, said, in the end, it all came down to relationships. It all came down to that. So trying to, cultivate your passions can be a group effort. At least for me, I think whenever I had the support of my family, the support of my friends, whenever they were a part of that, it seemed that whole process of reaching success became a little bit more organic. I wasn't cutting off my relationships to people. It was more sustainable and it made me happier. I think it's really important because you're going to have days where you feel overwhelmed. And if you have friends or family that you can talk to or people that you could get a different perspective from, that only helps the sort of goal that you're trying to reach. You know what I mean? Imagine being one of those people that has so much responsibility and they have nobody to talk to. They have no social circle, nobody to communicate with. How alone those people must feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Waking up, working, going to sleep, repeat is never going to lead to a fulfilling life. Yeah. You need to have those relationships with your friends, with your family, with your children. That's what makes an impact. That when you're on your deathbed, that's what you're thinking about. Not like, oh, it's a good thing that, I worked until 8 p.m. every night. That's not what you're going to be. Yeah. That's not what you're going to be remembering.
It's true. And it changes your relationship and the way that you see other people. And I know we talked about this already, but, especially in LA, like I live in Los Angeles, literally everybody here is trying to make something happen. And one thing that I noticed about all the people down here in LA is the way that they see other people. They don't see people as people per se. They see people as resources to get to where they want to be, right? So relationships when you're involved in hustle culture, relationships can become transactional instead of emotional, right? And if we are approaching our relationships that way, we don't value family, we don't value friends, and basically that whole genuine connection with other people goes out the window. Hustle culture, I feel like, is largely responsible for this, because instead of looking at somebody that we could, develop a friendship with, we're looking at, okay, what does this person do? How much money do they make? How can they support my dreams and my passions? And that is just a really, really toxic way to look at human connection. You know what I mean?
I had a really hard time when I moved to California, because I came from Texas, from the South, and people are just inherently friendly, and the agendas are different, family and raising children and getting married and all of that jazz is really more important than achieving career goals, and that's kind of a general way, a generality. It's not that way for everyone, of course, but when I moved to California, I noticed exactly what you said. Like even with guys I was dating, but when I would try to make friends with other females, and they'd ask me, "Oh, well, what do you do?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a nurse," and totally not interested, right? Like, "Oh, well, you're a nurse. You're not going to help me, in my career, so whatever." So it was really, really hard to actually connect with people. So I kind of figured that out, and I was like, well, maybe I should tell people that I'm not a nurse, that I work for a plastic surgeon. So, which I did, but I left that part out. So, I noticed the responses that I would get from people were really different whenever I was like, "Oh, I'm a nurse for a plastic surgeon." Then I had something to offer. Right.
That's so crazy.
So it really kind of sad. It was really sad.
Yeah. It's so
but
crazy
that was
when you think about that.
Kind of the only way that I could meet people.
Right. Right. And to think like that is obviously, there's an expectation, there's a belief that they have. Like they're not even thinking about you, It's like you don't really even exist to them. They're just always thinking about how I can fit you into my life in some way, what I can benefit off of you. And it just seems like just a really dark way to look at life.
Shitty way to live. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like that emotional connection is so important. So I think it's really, really important to work from a sustainable place. Hustle culture, this whole idea of, hustling for the purpose of wanting to be successful or rich is just not sustainable. Doing something out of desperation is not sustainable. I think what is sustainable is doing something for the betterment of humanity, doing something because it makes us happy, doing something that we simply love doing, adding value for other people. And I think it really shows. Like you can tell when someone's trying to sell you some snake oil, you know what I mean? Or you can tell when somebody's really doing it because they really care. They really care about you. Because there's something else driving the ship. You can tell that what they're doing it because they love to do it and they love people. And you can just tell when there are people out there that are just looking to take advantage of people. And we have to really practice balance with all of this and really work from our awareness and figure out where the sort of loopholes are and where the pros and the cons are in order to not get taken advantage of by this. And I think the way that we can avoid falling into all these different traps is by turning your attention inwards and focusing on yourself and realizing that you are responsible for how you feel, not somebody else. I mean, I think like now when I read these stories about success, I consider those things, but I also have to approach it from this place of knowing who I am first and knowing what it is that I represent and not losing sight of my values and my boundaries and what it is that is important for me. And I think that comes down to just building self-love, Yeah. It sounds so simple, but you'd be surprised at how many people miss that because they're so busy chasing other things. The simplicity is what makes it ironic, is that all these people are on this tireless journey pointed outwards out into the world, trying to find out what the magical cure is. And it is as simple as just turning your attention inwards and having enough courage to look at your own suffering, enough courage to look at your own feelings of inadequacy and really leaning into that and understanding why it exists. And I think the reason why people don't do that is because they're afraid. They're afraid to look at those feelings inside of themselves. And so they'll go, out into the world trying to find somebody else to fix it for them. But no one's going to fix it for you. Not to say that you can't be successful going down that path, but you can make it a lot easier on yourself if you're somebody that is really driven by love, to go inwards and operate from that place, right?
Like additionally to that is making sure that you reward yourself. You know, when you're hustling constantly, it's with the mindset that one day, you know, this is all going to pay off, and maybe it never does, you know, so it's really
True.
important to reward yourself along the way. Give yourself those breaks, give yourself the opportunity for your mind to wander and, you know, stimulate some of that creativity. We need to have a little bit of space, you know, need to have space in between your task to give your brain a rest. I mean, there's so many things that I think about subconsciously after I step away from something, and then all of a sudden I have the solution to the problem or a new idea, just by giving myself the space to do something else.
That's true. I notice a lot of what people do is driven by these feelings of wanting to be accepted by our communities, right? Want validation from other people. And I think that's the reason fundamentally why people do anything, right? And so the two ways that we can kind of go about doing it, people think that, you know, having money and being successful is you're going to get that validation. But I just feel like it's a better route to take, you know, by approaching it with this sort of energy of doing it because you love to do it, not because you're seeking validation from other people. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're doing it just for the joy and the sake of doing it. And I think that's the main thing. I think that it's all, to me, comes down to human connection. If you're happy doing what you do and it brings you joy, you'll naturally get that validation and that approval from other people because you will have attracted them with the love and the happiness that you radiate from doing what it is that you love doing, you know? Mm-hmm. And that is more sustainable.
The quantum physics of it.
Yeah, that's the quantum physics of it, because that is going to positively impact your relationships. And if it's about approval at the end of the day, if it's about human connection, that is something that, you know, is more sustainable. Like love is more sustainable. You know, attracting people with that energy of happiness and joy is more sustainable than just, you know, getting that surface level sort of approval and validation from somebody just because you're rich, you know? Mm-hmm. It's like, it doesn't seem sustainable to me. So you don't seek to prove somebody wrong. Don't seek to, you know, improve and expect success just in and of itself to bring you happiness. Don't seek success to escape from the toxic sort of inward reality that you may have. You know, don't seek success for money, and don't seek success out of anger. You know, do it because it brings you joy and it makes you happy. And I tend to think that, like, you know, the universe has a very specific lesson for all of us to learn. And I've never learned that by trying to fast track through life. I just learned it by trusting that the universe is going to pull me in the direction that I need to go. And some days it may seem like it's taking forever, and some days it might seem like it's speeding by, but just taking it as it comes and just focusing on the things that make me happy, the universe will determine whether or not I am best suited for that life or not, you know? Like, right. I could have chosen this sort of experience prior to incarnating here that maybe kept me in this space of sort of like the median point in life, because that struggle is every bit as responsible for my happiness as the happiness that I have is, you know? Mm-hmm. I'm at this point in my life where I do not define my success by how much money I have, or I do not define my happiness by how much money I have. The happiness that I feel and have cultivated over time, all of the challenges that I've ever experienced in my life have contributed to that. So I'm super grateful for how challenging life can become. And I think that in some ways it needs to exist in order to, you know, kind of catapult us forward into this sort of like spiritual awakening that we're all trying to reach. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're all trying to get there one day at a time.
We're all trying to get
one meditation at a time.
One meditation at a time. And I know that, you know, we talked a lot of shit on the hustle culture, Jen. And you know what I noticed? I actually read that Gary Vee he's not talking about hustle culture as much. He went from talking about hustle culture to talking about the whys. Why is it that you're doing what you do? And I think that's a really important way to kind of approach it from.
That is the most important thing. And I can promise you, from my own experience, anytime you're doing something that you don't love and you don't have a passion for, it's very rarely successful, and you're just wasting your time.
Yeah.
And you're making yourself miserable in the process. So what's the point?
Or maybe you do get successful and you have all these toys and you have this big house, but you're just like sitting alone in your living room, eating hot Cheetos, watching Netflix, because you have nobody to enjoy it with, no time. I mean, look, I think doctors go through a lot of shit. Like, doctors do a lot of good in the world, but I've known a fair share of doctors in my life. A lot of them don't have a social life. All they do is work all day long. They have all this money, but they don't have any time to cultivate human connection or human relationships. Wonder what that's like.
I dated a doctor all through college, and it's funny. I just talked to him the other day, and he has 2 kids now and is married, and he married an attorney. So, both high performing, high achieving people. And I saw this cool post on LinkedIn, and it was a mom who made a human body out of Play-Doh because her kid said that she wanted to be a surgeon. So I thought it was really cool, like this whole like human body kit, and you can cut it open, and it has all like the layers of the anatomy. It was really neat. So I sent it over to him. And he responded, he said, "I'm really discouraging my kids from going into medicine." And I thought it was kind of sad because he's an excellent surgeon and, a really smart person, but I know where that comes from. That comes from he's exhausted and has been exhausted since the day I met him, working over 100 hours a week whenever he was in medical school and doing his residency, now to being a surgeon and being on call all the time. And, not being able to really enjoy his life. Yeah.
And I think that with something like that, it's just really about balance, because it's not really his fault, like our system is sort of I guess, moderated in such a way that he just has to just work all the time. He's definitely doing something good for the world, you know, so he's not doing it for the wrong reasons. Because, it's really difficult to be a doctor. So I feel like you have to really have a passion for doing it in order to get to where he's at. But, that just speaks to a larger sort of issue that happens in the world, which is that people shouldn't have to work this hard.
No, they shouldn't.
People shouldn't have to work as hard. They shouldn't have to work as long in order to make a living, especially now.
I love the Dan Price model where he pays everybody. His minimum wage is $75,000 a year. That's a livable wage for anybody to live anywhere, Yeah.
That's true.
I would love to see the country evolve into that. I don't know if it ever will, but.
Yeah. And in some ways, maybe it's not ever going to. So what are you going to do at that point? Are we going to constantly beat ourselves over the head with this idea that we're never enough? Or are we going to maybe change our relationship with this whole thing and think okay, it may be wishful thinking from my perspective, but I feel like there is a deeper sort of spiritual reason why we experience this pressure, why we experience this sort of these challenges. Because the one thing that I know, just based off of my experience in life, is that we learn meaning through these challenges that we experience. Never learned anything good by having something given to me. And that 100%. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'm at the sort of peak of where I want to be, but I think it's just acknowledging the fact that I think this planet and this world and this incarnation is designed to get us to really awaken to love and to meaning. And the best way that we can do that is by, going through some of the most challenging things that we go through in this life. I think that's the way that we learn,
Yeah, I totally agree. And another small piece of advice, this is another thing my grandma said. She said, you never want to be the richest bitch in the cemetery. Which is what? Which is so true, right? If you have a poor relationship to money and you're clinging on and holding on tight to it and saving every penny and, not spending it and not enjoying it, what's the point of having it?
But I'm still back at you don't want to be the richest bitch in the cemetery. What is that? What is that about?
Yeah, you don't want to be dead with a savings account full of money that you never got to enjoy. So, you want those shoes, buy the shoes. You want to go on that vacation, go on the vacation. Trust me, you'll find the money. You'll figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got to treat yourself. You got to be good for yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't just save for like a retirement. Like you're going to have all this money when you're like 70 years old and you're not going to have any energy in order to spend it,
Yeah. In order to enjoy it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
I mean, we want to prepare for our future, but we don't want to hoard.
yeah, we don't want to
There's a
hoard. I
fine
knew
balance.
people, like I had some jobs in the past where there were employees that had been working with our organization for 20, 30 years. And it was time for them to retire. And they were so excited to retire. At the end of sort of their tenure there, I remember having meetings with them and they were just like, yeah, I appreciate everything that I've been through with you guys, but I'm so ready for retirement. And they had this sort of glow and this energy to them. Like they finally made it. And guess what?
Yeah.
6 months later, they came back and they were working again.
Yeah. Because they're bored.
You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
they were bored. And that doesn't not the case with everybody, but we have very, very, very specific ways that we look at that sort of process working out. And I'm just more about, you live in the moment, make yourself happy now. I tend to just live as though, I'm not going to be alive 5 years from now. Like I just try and just live life the best that I can every single day. And, I feel like that's the way that I kind of move through it, Jen. That's the way that I kind of move through it.
You have to reward yourself.
Yeah.
You can't always live in the future. You have to live in the present too.
You got to live in the present. That's the only place that's real anyways, right? It's the only place that exists that we really only know about what happens in the present moment. What happens in the past or the future, that's not you. That's your mind knowing. Where you exist is in the now, and I feel like that's where all of the inspiration, the creativity comes from. So just operate from that space. I love how all these episodes always just come down to just these very simple things. Just be in the now, be present, and operate. Meditate, operate from love, and then work from there and see what happens. You'd be surprised. Mm-hmm. You'd be surprised at kind of what goes down when you operate from that place. Some people will say that they love driving for wealth and success. Well, you aren't going to be too happy when you don't actually get there, will you? Wealth and success does not drive passion. Love for what you do drives passion. So find out what you love to do. There's somebody out there. Every single person has something that they are good at doing. So explore that. And the way that you find that out is by exploring yourself. Spend some time with yourself. Try and figure out what it is that you love to do and work from there. Yeah. Don't be too hard on yourself. Hustle culture is a crazy, crazy beast. Can't pull you left and right. But if you're somebody that absolutely has to go down that path, go down that path. But just be conscious and mindful of how it's impacting your life. Right?
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in to Divine Nobodies Podcast. Like and subscribe to our episodes on YouTube. You're probably already on an audio platform. If you can leave us a comment, let us know how we're doing. You can reach out to us also on Instagram at Divine Nobodies Podcast. Send us a message. If you have any topics you want us to discuss, we always love your feedback. And you could also email us at divinenobodiespodcast@gmail.com. Always look forward to sharing space with you guys. Have a good day. Namaste.
Namaste, friends.